Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, and share buttons. Well, what's happening right now is a really big deal. It completely transforms the world, and all we can hope for, I believe, at this point is that those changes are not rapid, or the rapidity of those changes do not increase. So what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about something we've recently talked about that we're seeing play out, unfortunately. And so that is this right here, the ongoing attacks on shipping in the Red Sea. So this is an article from USA Today. It says US and Britain launch second major attack on Iranian-backed Houthis in Yemen. And this gives us insight into what's happening there and what we've been talking about. And there are new revelations within this that we need to put the puzzle pieces together to see what's really happening here. So this says the United States and Great Britain launched joint attacks on Iranian-backed Houthi militants in Yemen Monday, the latest in a series of strikes intended to limit their ability to attack international shipping lanes in the Red Sea. And the intent needs to be to eliminate their ability to do that. It doesn't do any good to limit those attacks, or else the shipping will not continue. So let's move down a couple of paragraphs and see what else they have to say. They struck an underground storage site that contained more sophisticated missiles than those destroyed in the initial strikes, the official said. The US-led attacks have degraded, not eliminated, the Houthis' ability to launch attacks against shipping lanes, the official said. However, it has not destroyed the stockpile of weapons the Houthis have lobbed into shipping lanes. The Houthis have launched more than 30 attacks on international shipping since November and have continued to do so since January 11th. So guys, we talked about the Houthis were engaged in these attacks on shipping, that using low-cost drones as their munitions rather than high-cost missiles, they would be able to continue this almost indefinitely. They would be able to conceal those. This isn't a conventional attack where you have an airfield where all these attacks are coming from and you simply bomb the airfield and the attacks are over. This is not something, I'm afraid, that Operation Prosperity Guardian, the U.S. Navy, can stop through military action. They could only stop through other means, by applying pressure on the Houthis in some other way. And unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen. But let's look and see what all this means. We have this Zero Hedge article here. It says U.S. plans open-ended war against Houthis, but Biden officials assure it won't take years. So, guys, we have our official government denial, and you know what we always say about those. When the government officially denies something, usually you can be sure that it's going to happen, right? So unfortunately, this is an open-ended conflict. We're going to get into more of what this means as we read on. But it says it's no secret that ongoing Houthi attacks against international shipping in the Red Sea is a massive headache for the Biden administration going into the November election. If the U.S. does nothing, or opts simply for occasional missile strikes on Yemen, then commercial transit will continue being choked off, and the vital waterway, which serves 12% of all global trade. But doing more to go on the offensive also risks the U.S. being sucked into another regional quagmire, which steadily escalates, with no guarantees the Houthis will halt attacks. As we've talked about the significance of this, that the U.S. does nothing here, or if it does something but it doesn't work, what are the implications of that? Because United States power globally stems from its ability, more or less, to open the world's waterways to be freely navigable for world trade, for international trade. This, along with other things such as our rule of law, our deep and liquid bond markets, other items that play a role, but primarily our military power enables the United States to enjoy the world's reserve currency in the dollar. The dollar is the dominant currency of global trade, and it's from that position that the United States is able to fund the military to do these things. But if the United States can no longer do these things, what does that mean for the dollar? And then if the dollar fades as the dominant currency, or US Treasuries sink in value, then that impedes America's ability to project military power, which we're already seeing from a military standpoint anyway here. And what does that mean for the United States as a global superpower? So let's read on. It says, over the weekend, U.S. officials told the Washington Post that the Biden administration is planning for a sustained military campaign against the Iran-backed Yemeni rebels, even after some 7 rounds of major strikes have done nothing to deter or degrade their drone and missile attacks. Notably, U.S. leaders have still refused at this point to use the word war in relation to the attacks. It says some officials cited in the Post expressed concern that an open-ended operation could derail the war-ravaged country's fragile peace and pull Washington into another unpredictable Middle Eastern quagmire. This is in reference to the war which raged since 2015 and saw the Saudi-led coalition, which also included the UAE, this is important, remember these facts, and the US conduct hundreds of airstrikes, often killing civilians. So guys, this conflict that was going on before, the United States was involved in bombing the Houthis before, and it's done nothing to degrade this ability to carry on these attacks. It says, amid the White House deliberations over what to do, there's an acknowledgement that it will be extremely difficult to completely halt all Houthi missile and drone attacks in the region, at least in the near term. And I would ask, well, then what takes place in the long term? Why is the long term different from the near term? If you can't stop it now, what gives you confidence you can stop it a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now? It says this comes in the following from this report. Administration officials speaking on the condition of anonymity to discuss internal deliberations described their strategy in Yemen as an effort to erode the Houthis' high-level military capability enough to curtail their ability to target shipping in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden, or at a minimum to provide a sufficient deterrent so that risk-averse shipping companies will resume sending vessels through the region's waterways. And again, they either can or can't. It's not enough to curtail their ability. You need to stop these attacks in order to open up the shipping lanes, or it's a failure. They say, we are clear-eyed about who the Houthis are and their worldview, a senior U.S. official said. So we're not sure that they're going to stop immediately. Let me shine some light on this. They are not going to stop. And he says, but we are certainly trying to degrade and destroy their capabilities. Trying to, but they're not. It's not happening. Importantly, officials expressed optimism that the conflict in the Red Sea, so optimism, not certainty, that the conflict in the Red Sea won't drag on for years, akin to U.S. operations in Afghanistan, Iran, and Syria. And unfortunately, I can say that they won't, because just as we pulled out of Afghanistan and ultimately failed in that, because the same people that were taken out of power were back in power 20 years later. So that was a failure. We're going to see a failure here too. So this will not continue on, because in order to stop these attacks, the United States would have to conquer Yemen, and they aren't going to do it. Plain and simple. A lot of these munitions are being housed surrounded by civilians, right? And so the United States does not have the stomach to eliminate these attacks by indiscriminate bombing that's going to lead to media images of women and children. So they're just not. And so these attacks won't stop. I'm not saying whether that's right, wrong. I'm just saying that's what the reality is. And so these attacks will continue. It says officials acknowledged to Washington Post that they are unable to identify an end date or provide an estimate for when the Yemenis' military capability will be adequately diminished. And guys, the reason they can't do that is because there is no date when that military capability will be adequately diminished. And guys, I cannot underscore how important this is. This signifies a turning point, a new era in global power. So we had the post-World War II era, the Cold War era, the post-collapse of the Soviet Union. So the last 30 years of U.S. financial and military dominance as the world's lone superpower. Those days have come to an end, I believe, effectively with this conflict that's taking place right now. Because, guys, as we stated before, these missiles and drones are easy to conceal. They'll conceal them in places that the United States is not willing to bomb. You can send an almost endless supply of $20,000 drones toward Red Sea shipping lanes if they're being shot down with $1 million missiles. You'll happily do that all day, even knowing that none of those drones would hit its target, but you're just making your enemy go bankrupt over time. So these attacks will not stop. I don't believe that they can be stopped militarily, at least with conventional weapons, certainly. But there's also another reason they won't stop. It's because this is not the Houthis acting alone. And we talked about this in the past. There's more. There's not just Iran behind the Houthis. There's something bigger at play here. This is about global power, period. So let's take a look at this next Zero Hedge article. And this will give you some insight into what's really going on here. It says Houthis declare safe passage for all Russian and Chinese ships in the Red Sea. It says in a remarkable development, I don't think it's so remarkable. We talked about several weeks ago that this was likely the outcome and what was going on. And in a moment, when European retailers and factories are beginning to bear the brunt of the global shipping chaos and soaring Red Sea transit risk, the Houthis have declared safe passage for Russia and China. A senior Houthi official mentioned these U.S. rivals by name in an interview with the Russian outlet Izvestia on Friday. As for all other countries, including Russia and China, their shipping in the region is not threatened, he said, stipulating this will remain as long as they are not linked to Israel or its supporters. Moreover, we're ready to ensure the safe passage of their ships in the Red Sea because free navigation plays a significant role for our country. Guys, free navigation plays a significant role for the entire world. And the country or countries, recent history tells us the country or countries that can guarantee that free navigation rule the world. Let's look at the 19th century. Who ruled the world? The British Empire. People said the sun never set on the British Empire, and the Royal Navy was the dominant military power of the globe. But once they could no longer guarantee those freely navigable waterways, their empire was gone. And what signified the end of that empire once and for all? Well, it's certainly started with World War I, but it was in the same part of the world, the Suez Canal crisis in 1956. Egypt shut down the Suez Canal, France and Britain tried to open it back up and they couldn't do this. So here we have another instance where the United States since then, since World War I, and certainly since post-World War II, has taken over that role as the dominant naval power on the globe, guaranteeing safe passage of these ships for international trade. And now we're at a point where in the same place in the world, the same part of the world, they are unable to guarantee safe passage of these ships. And that has significant consequences that go way beyond the Red Sea and could end the United States as currently constituted as this global military and economic superpower. So let's see what it says right here. It says some of the vessels which have come under attacks thus far actually have connections to dozens of countries. But ships with Russian or Chinese ownership have yet to be attacked. So guys, we talked about this before. This isn't something that, well, the Houthis just decided that Russian and Chinese ships won't be attacked now because of their stance toward Israel. No, they haven't attacked them at all. These attacks started months ago. But they haven't attacked them during all that time because Russia and China are two of the major powers behind this action that's taking place. It says another Houthi official told Reuters separately that the group doesn't seek to expand its campaign after a fragile peace took effect with Saudi Arabia and the UAE concerning the Yemeni civil war. So listen to this. In an interview with Reuters, the chief Houthi negotiator stated the group has no plans to target its long-standing foes, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. So what do we have here? We have these attacks on all these Red Sea shipping lanes. But while there's safe passage for Russia, China, well, even our former enemies, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, they can move through there too. It's just the United States, the UK, all these Western-aligned powers. Are you seeing a pattern emerge here? You should see a pattern emerge here, and this should give you a better idea of what this is all about, guys, because it's about this is about way more than Israel-Hamas, which is the stated reason the Houthis are doing this. It's about much more than that. Let's return to this article from back in December from Markets Insider. It says, Brics-led de-dollarization should alarm the United States as new members could be most aggressive against the greenback, former State Department official says. Let's see if we recognize some of these countries as we read through this. It says, the recent expansion of Brics should be a key cause of concern for the United States, as new members, along with countries who want to join, could amplify de-dollarization, according to a former State Department official. Writing for the Atlantic Council, Thomas Hill noted that Egypt, among others, was added to the Brics Club, while Algeria and Tunisia were turned down. And it foreshadows how North African countries may become some of the most aggressive advocates for de-dollarization, he warned. The Brics-led de-dollarization effort should alarm U.S. policymakers, especially in light of the recent Brics membership expansion. It is clear that traditional U.S. allies such as Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates are already exploring ways to de-dollarize, and that Beijing is helping to move that process forward. So, guys, here we've talked about in the past this de-dollarization effort. We know Saudi Arabia has agreed to sell its oil and currencies other than the dollar, which it has not done in the past 50 years. We know the UAE purportedly a month ago came out and said they will not accept dollars anymore. Let that sink in for their oil. But here we have Egypt, which maintains and operates the Suez Canal. We have Saudi Arabia, who's granted safe passage, and the United Arab Emirates that's granted safe passage, and Beijing that's granted safe passage. All members of the Brics alliance. We have Iran, who we know is backing the Houthis, funding the Houthis, supplying the Houthis. They're part of the Brics coalition. Traditionally, a lot of these countries are aligned against each other, but now they have a common enemy, the United States and its allies. Are you starting to put the pieces of the puzzle together here? This is about more than the Red Sea. It's about more than Israel and Hamas. It's about global power. It's about global financial power. It's about striking the Achilles heel of the United States, which is the global dollar system, the financialized system that dominates the globe based on the United States dollar as the world's reserve currency, the dollar being traded in oil, for oil, the dollar being used as the dominant currency in international trade. It's about undermining that. That's what we're seeing happening in the Red Sea, in tandem with while we're seeing things like this right here. This is from Cryptopolitan. It says Brics, $28 billion bond sale shuns the US dollar. It says the new development bank, popularly known as the Brics Bank, is making a bold move in the global financial markets and a striking deviation from traditional practices. The Brics nations are launching Maharaja bonds, a new series of bonds that are set to reshape the financial landscape. This initiative is not just another financial maneuver. It represents a significant shift in economic strategies, as these bonds will be purchasable in local currencies, deliberately bypassing the US dollar. This move underscores the Brics nations' commitment to de-dollarization, challenging the long-standing dominance of the US dollar in global finance. Guys, that's what this is all about. Everything happening in the Red Sea is about this. And let's look at this article as well. It says Vivek Ramaswamy calls Brics common currency a threat to the United States. It says, and we know that he's dropped out now. This is from maybe a week ago. It says U.S. presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy is calling a potential Brics common currency a major problem for the U.S. government. Responding to a reporter, he explained how the Brics alliance and its de-dollarization mission is a threat to the United States that needs to be discussed more. This is a major problem for the United States, he said. This would permanently increase our borrowing cost if the dollar is no longer the established reserve currency of the world. He added that the U.S. battling trillions in debt will not help its fight in a potential global battle with the Brics common currency, saying the present is not, quote, the great time to increase your native borrowing cost. He says, in terms of a solution to the Brics common currency, the right way to deal with it is not to try to swat that down, but to increase the value proposition of the dollar itself by pegging the dollar to hard commodities. He adds that the single mandate for the Federal Reserve should be dollar stability. The US dollar has been far and away the leading global reserve currency for decades, used in trade by most countries. However, growing interest in Brics currency coupled with distrust in the US dollar is fueling the Brics global common currency. With the expansion of the bloc expected in 2024, it happened. Not sure why they would say that. It happened on the first of the year. But there is even more, I guess. Maybe they're talking about additional members that are expected this year. And an update on Brics currency and pay services, Ramaswamy feels the U.S. needs to tackle this potential threat before it grows even more. As we're behind the curve on this, even looking at that, I'm sure some people would look at the article before this one and say $28 billion bond offering for Brics. That's a drop in the bucket. It's nothing compared to United States treasuries and the United States debt market. That's the biggest bond market, the deepest, most liquid market on the globe. And I would say, yes, right now, until it isn't. What would cause that to go away? Because it's not a divine right given by God for the United States to have that position. What happens if one of these U.S. naval vessels is sunk? What happens if China and Russia come along and say, we can open the Red Sea for free trade. Anyone that wants to join our coalition, we'll make sure you have safe passage through the Red Sea. We'll make sure you have safe passage in these other areas. We'll make sure you have access to the natural resources that our coalition can provide. That's going to entice a lot of countries to move into their orbit. And I would say one of the chief aims of what's happening in the Red Sea, one of the chief targets is most likely India, because there is a lot of traffic in and out of India, shipping traffic that's going through the Red Sea. This puts pressure on India, which reportedly was the one not going along with the gold-backed currency back in August when the Brics nations met in Johannesburg. So is this applying pressure to them to move forward with that? But guys, we see this alignment of nations. We've seen the world bifurcated into the United States and its allies on one side, Russia and China and the Brics allies on another side. And we're seeing two different economic orbs of influence, two different military orbs of influence. The United States is waning in influence. That's one of the reasons this is very significant to Bible prophecy, because in the Bible, we do not read that the United States is a global superpower or any player of significance in the end times. The United States of America is not mentioned in regard to the events of the tribulation period. So that means in order to get to that period, United States influence would have to decrease significantly, because right now the United States is the dominant economic and military superpower on the globe. That's changing very rapidly. And guys, again, an event such as the closure of the Persian Gulf, the way we're seeing with the Red Sea right now, would cause a catastrophic collapse in global financial markets. And it would most likely, that would be the end of United States superpower status, as we would see these debt markets collapse. Because, and we'll get into this in a later video, but the United States can print dollars all at once. That's what the United States is exporting to the rest of the world. It's these dollars, pieces of paper and ones and zeros in a computer somewhere. They cannot print oil. So what happens if oil is $300 a barrel as a result of some conflict in the Middle East? There's nothing the United States could do at that point to prevent the economic collapse that we're already on the verge of, with $4 trillion in global derivatives, with $34 trillion in debt that cannot be paid back. All of these issues that we've talked about in the past, all of those would come to a head in a single day if we had a closure of the Persian Gulf. So guys, this is a big deal when we see the United States Navy saying, well, we don't have a timeline for when we can stop these attacks. And global shipping is being rerouted around Africa because the United States Navy is incapable of opening the Red Sea. That's a very big event with significant implications for global power and the projection of military power going forward. So, guys, I think this is a big, big, big deal. Yet we don't hear the mainstream media really talking about this at all. Maybe in passing. Or they'll talk about it as, oh, it's just some little rebels doing this and we'll bomb them and everything will be fine. No, this has much deeper and longer lasting implications for the world and for Bible prophecy. So guys, all this just indicates the times in which we live. So let me know what you think. Leave your comments below. Make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. God willing, I will see you on Friday. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.